Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Let's go Mets. Yeah.
You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show till Mets do us part. John from Brooklyn, Ibby reps NJ. We're the other team, I don't care what your friends say. Mets fans, we focus like a sensei. Listen to the podcast Monday, Wednesday. Made a couple bad plays, but we still won. Character, yup, we're gonna build some. Are you gonna check the pod? Is real fun. Just like Mookie, I will, son. So invest with your heart. Orange and blue till Mets do us part. Spring training, oh yes, it's the start. City Field gritty till Mets do us part. Hit home runs and knock it out the park. Big Apple till Mets do us part. You gotta believe and invest with your heart. Listen to the show.
Available now on all streaming platforms. If you love the New York Mets, check out Till Mets Do Us Part. Enough rapping. Let's get to gabbing.
Yo, what's going on, everybody? Welcome into Til Mets Do Us Part. We are live on YouTube. We are live on Twitter. A day late, but certainly not a dollar short. Trying to make sure that we are accommodating for the Mets off day. Figured what better way, especially with everything going on in Mets land, to celebrate than to give us an unrestricted path to doing this show today. No game before, no game after. We can put a lot of the stuff from the last week or so in the rearview mirror, and we can look forward to the last 20 or so odd games coming up that are going to be crucial for the New York Mets. Shout out to John Manconi, of course. We are live courtesy of the Brella Sports Network. John Saponaro coming to you from Savannah, Georgia, in enemy territory, sorta, kinda. And that means Matt Ibanez, my co-host, holding things down back in New Jersey. Ibby, before we get started, how you doing, man?
I am doing great, John. Thank you for asking. School has started, so I am back to work. Granted, I was working all summer, but I am back to my actual career. So it's back to the classroom for me. Having fun with that, getting through all the procedural things at the start of the school year, but doing well. Fantastic to be back with the show as always, and fantastic vibes that are happening in Queens right now. We get to cover all of it today. I'm very pumped up to talk with everyone, talk with you, talk with the chat. It's very, very interesting times here for our New York Mets with 22 games left of the regular season, and it's going to be a mad dash to the finish, and we're going to see what happens. This wild card race, nobody seems to want to lose. Everyone keeps on winning. No one can gain any ground. It's becoming a little bit frustrating. I think I saw a stat that said the Mets' remaining schedule, the win percentage of teams that they're facing is like 530.
Something like that. I saw the same thing, 535, 528, something like that.
Right. Whereas the Braves have it where it's like 488. So it's like you gotta play up. And this team can do well over the next 6 games, I think, if they could stay hot. And then of course things get interesting after that when it comes to the Phils and the Nats and things like that. So we'll see what happens. But all in all, doing well, pumped up. Let's have ourselves a show on a Thursday.
Absolutely. Shout out to everybody who is joining us in the chat. A lot of familiar faces, or I should say a lot of familiar handles that I can see and recognize. We got Jeff Cohen, Mr. Nobody, Rosie, Stanley Babbage. We got Stephanie, who was here and now is not quite here because she went into a tunnel. We got Armand. Shout out to Armand. He was with us yesterday over on the Goddamn Jets show, which is back in full effect each and every single week. And I want to give a special shout out to Charlie, who is in the chat. Yes. And I know Charlie's going through some stuff right now. I appreciate the transparency and sharing, what's going on in his personal life on Twitter and stuff like that. But, Charlie is a great Mets fan. See, I've never met him, never had the pleasure of meeting him. Seems like a really great dude from all of the interactions. So get well soon. We appreciate you obviously taking a little bit of time to listen to us and join the show, even though, you're not feeling the best right now. We certainly appreciate that. But most importantly, get well soon. We wish you all the best. I think that's what you were going to say too.
Yes, I was, because it popped up once I was done talking. I just wanted to give him a quick shout out because I know he's going through. It's not the greatest of things. So hopefully you are feeling better and hopefully listening to us or watching our beautiful faces can bring up your spirits. But we're wishing you all the best, my friend, and hopefully you get better soon.
Absolutely. And you know what? Look, I mean, not making light of it in any way, shape, or form, but the Mets, if you're a Mets fan right now, you got to be feeling good. They're doing a lot to lift people's spirits. Sports is supposed to be, that kind of distraction, right? That's the kind of thing that people look for. It's a 3-hour retreat, 2.5-hour retreat, whatever it might be, from whatever is going on, in your life, in the world at large, whatever kind of stresses and stuff that you have, in your own personal life. And right now, it's not always the case, because sometimes sports is just the ultimate frustration. But when things are going good, the way that they are for the Mets right now, it is a welcome distraction for many people, of course. So, look, we can start right there, Ibby, with the fact that they are playing great baseball. I should just mention Jeff Cohen saying, John, shouldn't you be wearing a Savannah, Georgia cap instead of a Hawaii cap? I wish I was in Hawaii, although Savannah is fun. I will say that. Savannah is a really cool town.
Should be rocking that Bananas hat right now. That's what you should be rocking.
I don't have a Bananas hat. I have a Bananas shirt.
I've been wanting to get one.
I do not have a Bananas hat. I have a shirt, but I do not have a hat. So I didn't bring it because it's kind of like wearing the band T-shirt to see the band. You know what I'm saying? I would have brought it, actually, if the Bananas were in town and I was going. I went last year. It was terrific. It's a wonderful experience. The Bananas, I've been here, when it's all said and done, I'll be here for just over a week. And the Bananas are just, they're doing their tour thing, and their season's winding down. So they're just not here, which is a little bit of a bummer, because I would have loved to have gone back. But they're not here. Savannah's cool anyway, though. It's a spooky town. It's there's a lot of history here, of course. And I was saying this, I think, on the Jets show yesterday, that you come to a place like this in the South, like a lot of people have died in the South, in the southern part of America, for a myriad of reasons over the lengthy history of this country. And, with that, there's always just kind of a spookiness about coming to certain places in the South. But then, like, Savannah looks spooky because they have all those, like, hangy oak trees with their mossy leaves hanging down. So as soon as you can see, like, behind me, the mural behind my bed. It gets creepy. Like, as soon as the sun goes down, you feel like you're in a horror movie, like, immediately. As soon, it's like real dark, and it's like a big enough city, but it's also, it's really not a big city. You know what I mean? So you don't have like a lot of people like walking around at night. You know what I mean? So like you're all of a sudden just like out by yourself. Like, what the hell? So but it's cool. I went on a true crime of Savannah tour last night, walking tour, which was a lot of fun, hearing about some of the awful tragedies that have happened in Savannah, Georgia. So anyway, it's been good. I also just didn't want to fly back and forth. So, it was easier to I was working in Atlanta last week, easier to just stay out here on the East Coast, which means you and I are in the same time zone, and we can do this show, without having to worry about time zones. So anyway, that said, Mets take care of business. Mets do their laundry, if you will, right? Yes. Handling the socks, the White Sox, the Red Sox, doesn't matter what color socks, they're taking care of them. En route to 7 wins in a row, looking really, really, really good. I know the Mets played some great baseball in June, Ibby, but you could argue that this has been the best stretch of baseball the Mets have played all season, at least right up there with what they did in June. So you can't really say anything negative about what's going on right now.
No, and the fact that it was brought up the other day, or maybe it's just 2 days ago, talking about how this Mets team over the last 3 months, when you look at the record, they're one of, if not the top teams in baseball in terms of overall record over those last 3 months. And I know we've had our ups and downs within those periods, and people have said, "Oh my God, the season's over," and this and that. But they're playing really, really, really good baseball. And I know that I had brought up, maybe 2 or 3 shows ago, I was talking about how the importance of the offense was going to go very far. The crazy thing for me in all of this is the fact that this team, over the 7-game win streak, over the last handful of weeks, really have been carried by the pitching. And it's wild to say, because you look at this offense, and we could talk about Francisco Lindor till we're blue in the face. And believe me, we will gladly do it, because we love Lindor and we'll always defend him and push for him in any aspect of this game. But when you look beyond Lindor, when you look beyond Vientos, and you look deeper at this lineup, the offense really hasn't been, I mean, and of course, Jesse Winker, but when you look beyond that, there's been a lot of holes in this offense. Nimmo's been ice cold. He still is starting to get a little worrisome at this point. Francisco Alvarez is still struggling outside of a couple of hits here and there. Pete Alonso, every show, we basically will have a Pete Alonso segment at the end of this show, most likely. You look at the bottom half of the lineup has been rough. We talk about Harrison Bader overall has been good, but the hitting hasn't been able to really buy a hit lately. So when you look at it, it's crazy to think that the pitching has stepped up to the point where it's carrying us, which I didn't think was possible, because I said, and I can admit it, I thought that this pitching, how we had it going into this month of September, was going to be what ultimately leads us falling short. I thought that the offense had to go insane, and some of them are right now, but overall, everyone had to go insane to really give us that push, to give us a shot. But the pitching is doing its job. The question is, can that pitching hold on while this offense, the back end of this offense, provides for the top end, and put it all together so we can try and, again, like I always say, try to find some space and create it.
Yeah, absolutely. Jump into the comments really quick. A lot of good stuff coming in. We've got Mr. Nobody saying it's been a real fun year with this team. I think that's one thing that is kind of inarguable,
Absolutely.
right? You get to this point of the season. Look, the Mets had some lows, most notably in May, but even over the course of some of these hot streaks, they've had some downs. But, you get to August, you get now into September, you get to 20 games left, you're still in the thick of a playoff race. This is, and I'm not trying to say like, all you want is meaningful games in September, but realistically, it'd be any team. It's all you can ever ask for. It depends how meaningful they are, right? Like, you'd love to be in a position where it's like, oh, they're meaningful because you're fighting for the 1 seed, right? Like, that would be, you want the best record in baseball. That would be the most meaningful, that would be the top end of meaningful games. But all any team or any fan base of any team could want is playing meaningful games at the end of the season. You don't want to be out of it. So it's not like this defeatist kind of loser mentality of like, oh, I just want to be in the conversation. No, every franchise wants to play meaningful games. To what end? It remains to be seen. But right now the Mets are there and they're doing their thing. So it has been a fun season. Stanley, pretty confident. We can talk about this coming up in a little bit, just saying the Mets will beat the Reds. I think the Mets should handle the Reds.
They should.
I saw somewhere that the Reds might be going with 3 bullpen games.
I didn't see that. Okay.
Yeah, I saw it in one place. Can't confirm that that's the case. Maybe they call somebody up and they move around some things on their roster, but it seems as though we're at least going to get 1 or 2. And obviously that,
they are banged up. Green's banged up. Lodolo's banged up. Yeah.
Exactly. So we might miss, some of the better parts of that pitching staff, and maybe that can help the offense get right on a more consistent basis. Everybody not named Francisco Lindor. Carson just reacting to me talking about Savannah and my true crime tour said death. Nice. Richard Zucker, I think might be a new commenter, or at least fairly new, saying a real roller coaster. It kind of has been, but again, roller coasters, Ibby, are supposed to be fun. I will say that roller coasters are scary sometimes, and they are anxiety-inducing, and they give you weird feelings in your stomach.
And it's the way we described this season from day one. We said, get ready, because it's going to be a roller coaster, because that's the way this team was built, and they are putting us on one hell of a ride. That's for sure.
They absolutely are. Stephanie saying Lindor finally getting his due from the fans. We're going to talk a ton about Lindor coming up in a little bit. But yes, well overdue to your point and to Stephanie's point. And then this was the one I wanted to bring up coming out of what you were just talking about. And thankfully, Douglas brought it up so that I would have it handy, because I didn't have it in front of me. But Howie Rose posted this earlier today. He said that the Mets are playing at a 104-win pace over their last 81 games. So this is a sample size that is real. If you go back to, I guess it's sometime in June, to cover this 81 game span. I don't know exactly what the Mets record is. Howie did say it in the tweet. I don't have it. But the most important part is that they are on this crazy good pace, a 104 win pace over that time. And Ibby, you can't sneeze at an 81 game sample size. That is not a small sample size. It is legitimately half of a season. And that is a very, very, very good place to be. And honestly, part of the reason why I'm bringing this up is because it surprised me. I didn't realize that the Mets were playing to that level over that length of time.
I mean, it also goes to show you how I mean, I wouldn't consider us to fall into this trap, but how, the places that we hang, if you will, and that being X or Twitter or whatever. I'm sorry, Twitter. We don't call it X on here. We're calling it Twitter.
Don't you dare. Don't you dare.
We're hanging on Twitter, and you kind of get wrapped up, and everyone else having their shows and things like that. You kind of get wrapped up in the overall ups and downs. So, yeah, you do kind of lose sight of the fact that this team over the last 3 months has really been one of the best teams in baseball. So, yeah, it does kind of get lost on us because we get so wrapped up in the day-to-day, even though we are a weekly show, which, again, we like doing because it allows us to have a little bit more foresight and, being a little more calm as opposed to so reactionary. But, yeah, this team is playing good ball, and it's still crazy to say that we're still waiting, even though they are playing at 104 win pace over that X amount of games, that we're still waiting for. I'm not saying they're not playing complete ball, but again, I still don't think we've hit that point where everyone in the lineup is humming, or everyone, like, when it comes to the lineup and the bullpen. And, like, it's crazy to say because we were saying that last year as well. We're like, man, they just can't have it would always be one thing and missing two. It'd always be two things and missing one. Like, you weren't getting all facets of the game. But as you can see, a giant difference in the overall outcome of season to this point. Now, this team last year was nowhere to be found at this point. They were they were dead and buried. Mm-hmm. What helps is the bullpen. The bullpen over the last week, since the last time we recorded, shout out to Michael Mayer for this one. The Mets bullpen over the last week has a .83 ERA with 4 saves and a .65 whip. We were talking last show about the deficiencies and the woes of the bullpen. And of course, a week goes by after we say those things and they start showing out, which is fantastic. You want to see those things. And one more that I have to bring up, and I think that's why there's this huge difference between this year and last year. Mark Healy putting out a great one that I had no idea about. Seeing him posted this morning, or not.
I would file the Mark Healy one underneath the same category as Howie Rose's tweet. Both very, very, very informative because neither one of them feels accurate, although they are.
Right, although they are. So just saying it right here, the Mets are 24-15 in one-run games this season, which is the best in the National League and second in baseball only to the Rays. Last season, the Mets were 25-28. Now, I would love to know what that number was in 2022, but at the same time, you can see there's a huge difference between this year and last year, and I think that's why you're playing meaningful baseball in September now with a team that's fighting in comparison to last year. The bullpen's helping, but you are playing better and sharper baseball when the games get into crunch time, which is huge.
Yeah, which is funny because with all of the woes that the bullpen has gone through this season, and let's be fair, we both love Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz seems like such a good guy who really cares so much. The fact that he re-signed the way that he did, like there's so many other players that could have had that season after the down season he had with the Mets and went and got the bag elsewhere. He said he wanted to be here. He put his money where his mouth is. And I guess money talks. The Mets made him the highest paid closer in the game, but he deserved to be the highest paid closer in the game coming off of the year that he gave us. Now, obviously, last year, everything kind of falls apart with the injury. This year, he has not been able to have the season that he would have wanted to have in terms of consistency. And I said it last week, Ibby. I tweeted it out where, people were talking about the usage of Diaz and why are they using him so much? And I was like, this is a guy who wants to be used. And because of the injury, because of the suspension, because of coming off of the other injury, the long-term injury to the knee, he hasn't really been in a groove. And so it seemed like a case to me where he probably went to the manager and said, look, I feel good on my leg. Whatever, got me on the IL for the short stint, that was just a little nonsense. I'm good there. I feel healthy. I need to get in a rhythm. And this is the only way I can get in a rhythm is by pitching. And we've seen that since they've used him more, he has been, one, more effective, and two, his stuff now is starting to finally look on a consistent basis like Edwin Diaz's stuff. Yesterday, he was over 100 miles per hour, I think, for the first time since maybe his first appearance of the season, which you can kind of put a lot of that on just adrenaline, right? Like, I know he did come out firing darts in some of the spring training starts and, his first couple of appearances in the regular season. But again, you're looking at a lot of adrenaline pumping through that man's veins at the time. So when you look at the ups and downs that he's had, you look at the ups and downs, mostly downs of the entire bullpen, it is hard to believe that you look up here and the Mets are, best record in the National League in one-run games because it seems like they blow those games all the time. But the other part of it that I want to mention is that it almost doesn't matter what a portion of your team does for the entire length of the season if they show up when it matters. And what I mean by that is, if you're an NFL team, you've got offense, defense, special teams, right? Your special teams can be abysmal. But if you're in a playoff hunt and all of a sudden your kicker gets out of his own head and starts hitting big-time field goals, you can win a championship that way.
You could.
And it can just turn on a dime. The Mets bullpen has not been good. The Mets bullpen has been infuriatingly bad for most of the season. But right now, it looks like Diaz is on the upswing. They've gotten guys back. They've gotten huge contributions from, as Carson put it, Philip Lewis Maton III, who stole all of our hearts. He's been terrific since he's been here. It looks like Ryan Stanek is finally turning into the Ryan Stanek stuff-wise that was with Houston. And so it doesn't matter what these guys did a month ago, 2 months ago, 3-4 months ago.
Right now.
If Reed Garrett is going to be the Reed Garrett that he was for 6 weeks to start the season, holy hell, guys. You see how quick it can change. The Washington Nationals had the worst bullpen in baseball the year they won the World Series, and it all clicked at the right time. Now, granted, they did it by flooding their bullpen with starters that they weren't going to use, and that was a big boom for them. But things like that can happen. Maybe you don't know if Tyler McGill's going to find himself in the bullpen here. When Blackburn comes back, maybe that changes the tenor of the bullpen. Maybe he's really good in that role for a couple weeks. There's only a couple weeks left, even counting the playoffs. It's a handful of weeks left. You don't need this to be a long-haul thing. You need guys to get hot and get right, and it seems like that's what's happening right now. So
to carry on to what Carson was saying and bring up Phil Maton, and I want to give a shout out to Mets Weekly who were on at 3:00 today. Shout out to Carson and Andrew who did a great job on that one. They put up some great stuff overall when it came to the really in-depth and the nitty-gritty of Phil Maton to this point. So if you want to check that stuff out, make sure you do head on over to their channel at Mets Weekly and watch their latest. But I also made a quick one today just to give some overarching stats. It's not my best work when it comes to a graphic, but I want to just bring it up. We have the marvelous Mr. Maton, and of course, some of the stats that he has brought since August 1st, 13 innings pitched, 5 holds, 15 strikeouts to 9 hits, 4 earned runs with a 1.32 ERA. He has been what we've been wanting on the back end next to Edwin Diaz. And if Edwin Diaz is going to be the Edwin Diaz that we think he can be moving forward, pitching consistently, throwing hard, slider being there, hitting the right spots, if you can have someone like Maton in front of him, which I am comfortable with having him as the 8th inning guy, if that's the route that they choose to go. Look, last night, did it get a little bit dicey here and there? Sure, you thought maybe a couple soft hits here and there. Well, I got nervous. I thought that Yoshida hit was going to go over off the bat. I thought it was going over Lindor's head. I was like, oh, Christ, we got a tie game now. But, of course, Lindor makes the catch. But worked out of it, was gutty in that spot. Those are the things that you want to see from the back end of your bullpen. And the fact that he's been able to do that, over the last month, really, that's awesome to see. And we need that consistency. That back end is so important. And as someone mentioned earlier in the chat, the more we get, and I've been saying this since day one, the more length that we get from our starting pitchers. And it shows that Carlos Mendoza is willing to go with length from said starting pitchers, the Luis Severinos of the world, the Sean Manaeas of the world, the David Petersons of the world, showing up and giving 6, 7, sometimes 8 innings of work. That goes beyond when it comes to helping this team, keeps the bullpen fresh, and it allows us to win those tighter games that Mark Healy had brought up before when it comes to one run.
Absolutely. I want to jump back into the comments because there's so many good ones coming in right now. I'm going to try to take them in an order that makes sense, but I might not be able to because there's so many I want to get to. Richard Zucker from before said, I just subscribed. So thank you for doing that. Welcome. And for subscribing, you have been officially entered to win an autographed Edwin Diaz baseball that we are going to give away when we get to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. We are getting close. It is taking a long time, but we are getting closer with every subscription. So hope you enjoy the show. Keep those comments rolling in. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being live. Thank you for subscribing. When I was talking about roller coasters, Rosie said astutely, roller coasters can also make you nauseous. And Richard saying roller coasters can give you a heart attack, which are both very fair observations. Yamid saying Astros once 12 games under 500, Mets once 11 games under 500. Would be interested to see if they meet in the World Series. Yes, that would be a very, very interesting turn of events for both teams, certainly. I'm not sure. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, Ibby. Just saying this out loud just for the – listen, you'd rather make the World Series and let the chips fall where they may. I don't know that this Mets team wants to play a Houston Astros team that knows how to win a World Series. It's kind of like, look, if you told me that the Mets can make the World Series, but it has to be against the Astros come what may, or the Mets won't make the World Series, obviously I'm going to make the World Series. But it feels oddly reminiscent of 2015, where I think the Mets beat the Toronto Blue Jays. I don't think the Mets were prepared, even though they were up in all those games that they lost and all that stuff, very well documented. I don't know if they were prepared to go up against a team in the Royals who had just been there, knew what it takes to lose, knew what it took to be different to try to win. So I'd rather not see the Astros, but that would be a fun story nonetheless.
Absolutely.
Stephanie saying, I feel like this team gets gels better than the 2022 team. It just took them a little longer to wake up. I think there is a lot of similarities between this and the 2022 team, but I think there are certain things about this team, Ibby, from a broad strokes perspective, not from necessarily a Mets fan perspective, that make this team a little bit more likable. Like, I think because they're kind of underdoggy. There's no Jacob deGrom.
Right.
There's no Max Scherzer. There's no – now, look, it's not taking anything away from Lindor and what he's been and what he means in terms of being one of the best players in baseball. It doesn't take anything away from – I know he's had a down year, but Alonso and the fact that he's, one of the best power hitters in baseball. And, they have some of these prospects that were big-time prospects, even though they're not contributing right now, like Francisco Alvarez. But, and you've got the highest-paid closer in baseball. Like, I understand you still have these big names, but – there are so many unsung guys. David Peterson coming out of nowhere, the contributions from a rebounding Severino and, Sean Manaea and, getting Mark Vientos coming out of nowhere. So I think from a broad strokes perspective, maybe baseball, national news media, other fans of other fan bases of other teams and things like that, I think this team is a little bit more inviting than they maybe were when they were expected to be a bit better with some of those high payroll guys and juggernauts. And then the last thing I'll jump out for now before we go back into the comments here in a bit. Richard Zucker saying this is the time of the year that separates the men from the boys. And I totally agree.
And I would agree with that, Richard. And I just wanted to bring up Juniors real quick here, just saying how this team is so much more fun to watch than the 2022 team. And I'm glad that Steph brought that up because I was driving yesterday and I was just, like I always do, just listening to certain things and talking to myself about the Mets, because that's what I do, like a crazy person. But I was just thinking to myself, I was thinking about the 2022 team and where they were, and I was thinking about the month of September, and we all remember how the 2022 team kind of crumbled in September and how the wheels really came off. And look, we're still at the front end of September. Anything can happen with this team as well. But there's just something about this team that does feel a little bit different. And you brought up the likability factor, and the 2022 team, how we were all invested in. I'm not taking anything away from it, but it was a very business-like team, like Buck Showalter at the front and everything. It was just very, very much like take your lunch pail to work type of thing and go in there, do a job, and
didn't they feel? I'm not trying to be revisionist when I say this, and obviously the Buck Showalter connection is going to maybe make this be a little on the nose. Didn't they feel a little bit more like a Yankees team looking back?
Looking back on it,
a team
there was
that's
no
expected
fun
to be really good,
right?
Not necessarily having a lot of fun, having a high payroll. To me, it felt like, if we look back, felt like a Yankees team from like the dynastic Yankees from like the mid '90s to the early 2000s.
And anyone would want that. When you look back on, like you said, it's tough to be revisionist because when you look back at what the team and the franchise had prior to that, you're like, God damn, this is fantastic. We're winning ball games. I don't care how we do it. But yeah, it was very business-like. Like it was no look, if you win games, I'm having fun no matter what. But looking back, you can just say, there was just something missing. And like, they were very much a grinder type of team, like grind it out. And I think that by the time they reached September at that point, because everything had hit perfectly with that team in terms of a lot of guys 90th percentile and everyone was having fantastic years, but they grinded out every single game. By the time they hit September, they had nothing left. And then the Marte injury, like everything kind of crumbled from there. But like looking at this team, like you said, over the last 81 games, half of the season, really, they're trending in a position in a way where they're going up as opposed to going down like the 2022 team was. This team's kind of, I'm not saying they're going up, but like they're riding that coaster. Like it's starting to go up a little bit, but this month is going to tell a big story. And I think it was, who said it in the comments? It was Will saying how, look, the playoff hopes and things like that. Cause I do have a question on the YouTube page. If you haven't voted already, make sure you do, saying that there are 22 games left for this team. Do you feel right now, the Mets are a half game out of the wild card, do you feel like this team is going to make the playoffs? Because right now, if they started today, they'd be out. They miss it by half a game. But do you think this team is going to make it? And what he's saying here is proper. That Atlanta series could end up playing big. We still have 7 games left with the Phils. A lot can go down, but where this team is, if we're comping to like 2022, I feel like they are on a better trajectory as opposed to where that team was. They were running on fumes at that point. When you look back on it, you can really see it now. What, during that time, we were getting lost a little bit in what they were doing and hopefully thinking that, oh my God, they're going to turn around. They're going to be fine. They're going to be okay. They're going to get to the playoffs. They're going to win, like all this stuff. But seeing this team now and how certain guys are starting to really put things together, I think they're on an upward path. But I will say this, in order to truly hit that point, to really go up, the offense has to pick up the guys that are providing. I love what I'm seeing from Lindor, obviously. I absolutely love what I'm seeing from Mark Vientos. I love what I'm seeing from Jesse Winker and all that he's been bringing to this team, which we'll talk about in a minute. But the rest of the lineup, it's got to wake up. We need Alonso. We need Nimmo. We could use something from Alvarez. If Harrison Bader wakes up a little bit, like we could use these guys. But I love the comp overall and saying how it does reflect 2022 a little bit, but I also think that it kind of is above 2022, as crazy as that sounds, because that team won 101 games.
Yeah, look, and this is not to counter what Will said, because obviously that is going to be a huge series against Atlanta, and you'd like to take care of business as much as you possibly can. With only 22 games left, you kind of have to. Where other teams aren't losing, you kind of have to. But it'd be the one thing that I think is getting a little swept under the rug, a little underrated. And, Keith kind of pointed this out on the broadcast 2 nights ago. Right now, the Mets are 7.5 games behind the Phillies, with 7 games to play with the Phillies still. Now, is that a tall order? Is that a lot of ground to cover in 22 games? It most certainly is. Am I going to sit here and tell the over 100 people that are here watching live and everybody who's going to watch and listen later, don't worry, they're going to win the division? No, I'm not going to tell you that. This is not me, preaching the ultimate positive. But what I am going to say is that because they have so many games left with the Phillies and because they are so tight to the Braves now, there is a situation where the hierarchy in this division and where the wild card goes can also shift very quickly because of what the Mets still have in front of them. Could you see a situation where, the Braves stay in front of the Mets, but then the Mets beat the Phillies and the Mets help the Braves win the division, but then the Mets beat the Phillies for the wild card? I know that's a mouthful, but you could see a situation like that is still on the table. So there's a lot of different machinations here with those 3 teams that can still happen. And I think that's something that, people need to key in on. And it was a really great observation from Keith Hernandez, of course, at this point, that you shouldn't write that off. I want to jump back into the comments again, because we always have great comments, but there's a lot coming in that really kind of further the conversation. The Mets this season, so much fun to watch, so much more fun to watch than the 2022 version. Mr. Nobody saying, they did seem like a Yankees team in 2022, overspending, all business, that kind of vibe. Carson saying, this team is savoring the gas tank. 2022 burnt themselves out with mid-30s players using their athleticism with limited power. They were dead on impact as September entered. That is a very, very, very good assessment of the 2022 team. A couple fun ones here. Stevie Mack, Phil the Baton Maton.
That's a good one. That's a good one, Stevie. That's a good one.
Charlie saying playoff shares for Zach Short, Joey Wendell, Julio Teheran, and Michael Tompkins.
It's insane, and it just goes to show you how long the baseball season is, because you hear those names, you're like, holy shit, I completely forgot that we were doing shows talking about those guys and wanting to ship them off on rockets and things like that. But it's crazy how long the baseball season really is.
Absolutely. Couple more here. Mr. Nobody saying the Maton graphic is the new lavender graphic. And to that end, Douglas Barnes, a little disappointed. No sultry voice. I mean, what the hell?
Look, guys,
I
literally made that like 5 minutes before the show. I was like, oh, I want to get these stats up there. I want to do something. I wanted to get it up there, but I'm sorry. I will make sure next week I have something better for whatever comes up in that time frame. And maybe I'll throw in a voice. We'll see.
Maybe we'll see. Carson saying, I like the Dr. Phil nickname better for
That's
Phil Maton. But then he says the Dr. Phil who isn't a hack, I shall say. That's true. That is accurate. If you know anything about Dr. Phil, none of it's really real.
I prefer the comedian that does the Dr. Phil.
Oh God, so good. That is such a great bit. Darren saying it would be like the 2019 Nats, who started off poorly, wound up beating the Astros on the road, saying the Nats had Baby Shark. We have OMG. True to both of those. Rosie saying Truist Park, House of Horrors, and that effing chop. Yeah, hopefully not. And then TJ, mental mindset needs to be different for September. The 22 Mets hoped to win these games. Hopefully the 2024 Mets will know they will win these games. And I do think that kind of furthers along with what Carson was saying, where it is a mindset thing. And it seems as though this team is a little bit more keyed in. And maybe that's why, going all the way back to Stephanie's original comment, maybe that's why even for Mets fans, and a lot of people have agreed, this team seems a little bit more fun to root for and seems a little bit more prepared for it. Also, remember, though, Ibby, a lot of the guys who experienced the failure in 2022 after a big season are still here. Nimmo and Diaz and Pete and Lindor and McNeil. And, like a lot of those guys are here. Yeah. And it's nice sometimes to have the guys who were here that were like, don't get ahead of yourselves because stuff can really go wrong. And then it's also nice to have some positive vibes guys who weren't here, like Iglesias, like Winker, like Bader, who can be like, we weren't here, so we're not going to do that this year. Like, it's nice to have both of those sides of the coin. And I think it is going to propel the Mets here into a strong finish. I really do. I don't know what's going to happen because, like you said, teams keep winning. Right now, the Mets are a half game out of the spot that they need to be in. But I do think the Mets are going to finish strongly. I do.
We'll talk more about the schedule in a little bit because it is a very interesting one coming up. I just wanted to bring up Carson's comment real quick, talking about how things can change. And I always laugh at this one because I feel that if you ask any Mets fan, when they think back to 2015, everyone always thinks about John Mayberry. Like, he's the guy that's him and Eric Campbell just like always stick out like a sore thumb. You're always, when you think about how things change so quickly, and when Steven Matz had that game against the Reds and he was the one who drove in all the runs because the offense was completely terrible. It is funny, but it is true. Things can change on a dime. And what you just said, talking about bringing in different types of guys and the vibes that they bring. Jesse Winker, some people, and I don't like giving credence to people on Twitter that bring up nonsense or bitch and moan, or I forgot who it was, so I'm not going to say the name, obviously, but the complaining at the beginning when it came to Jesse Winker was just, it was too fast. It was ridiculous. It didn't really make a lot of sense. And for those people, just so you know, Jesse Winker, since he has joined this Mets team at the deadline, he has a slash line of 306, 341, 471 with a 128 weighted runs created plus. So he has been providing a lot. Mm-hmm. I know I said it to you. I said it to Ant when we did our cross promotion show. When it came to guys that we wanted, I had been saying, and I was steadfast how I wanted Jesse Winker on this team. He made sense from the fan perspective, the heel to the face dynamic that we talked about. He made sense from a vibes perspective and from an overall fit perspective as a lefty, as another outfielder. It made too much sense. He has come in. So when I hear Carlos Mendoza talking about how this guy had really just gotten here, and he's already fit into the fabric of this team. That goes to show you that David Stearns has his finger on the pulse of this team, as does Carlos Mendoza, when it comes to who can we put in here that's going to just it's going to transition, make the transition feel seamless. Who's just going to keep the wheel going, if you will, become another spoke. And he has done that. Grand slam last night, huge hit. He's been having big hits here and there. It's awesome to see. And when you see those numbers, hopefully the ones that were bitching and complaining learn how to be a little bit more patient, as we say on the show all the time, patience over panic.
Also fundamentally unfair because it was inaccurate for a few different reasons. One, Jesse Winker, he's had a great power stroke last week or so.
Right.
Not a power hitter. Jesse Winker is more of a gap-to-gap average hitter with some pop. So to expect him to come here and give you like this tremendous insertion of power into the lineup, that's not necessarily his game. It never really has been. Jesse Winker's like a 20, 25 home run max kind of bat, which in today's day and age is not a huge home run hitter, right? So expectations there, unfair, kind of inaccurate. Then the other part of it is too, when he got here, he did not have a lot of at-bats over the first 2.5 weeks or so with runners in scoring position. So if you're not a home run guy, or you don't necessarily have this big-time home run stroke that he hadn't found yet to this point, you're not really going to drive in a lot of runs because Jesse Winker is better at driving in runs when guys are on base, and he didn't have a lot of men on base, specifically runners in scoring position. That's the other part. And I think the most important part of it is, Ibby, you mentioned his slash line. I think you said 306 or 308 right now is the batting average for him.
306,
Even early on, he was like bouncing back and forth between like 306 and 298 and 295. Like he was contributing. Like it was not bad. Like in terms of his early at bats, let's say his first 2 weeks with the Mets, I don't think he was worse than like 288. So like, and again, small sample size, very, very small because he's a role player, but I just think all of the criticism was unfair because he really has not been bad at any point since the Mets acquired him. So I think for those three reasons, it's just a very foolhardy argument to make. You know, people saying, oh, he's like Tyler Naquin. I know Keith from Shea and Sons was joking around about that. Like Keith tweets out a lot of stuff that's tongue in cheek and it's meant to be, you know, funny and joking. But like people, one, took that seriously, and people, two, were making other assertions along those lines. Kind of like what I tweeted out yesterday when I was like, hey, look, I'm not counting the Mets out of this game. But it's important to realize that the Mets don't need to win every single game. They don't need to win the rest of the games of the season. Not every team wins every game. Not every team wins or sweeps every series. The Mets have won the series already. They have a distinct disadvantage as far as the starting pitcher is concerned. So if the Mets don't win, I don't want to see people on Twitter, you know, jumping off proverbial roofs. And, you know, most people got what I was saying, but there were some people that were like, don't count them out yet. How could you do that? Or like after they won, they're like, see? And I'm like, I wasn't saying they can't win. I'm just saying you can't sit here and be like, oh my God, the Mets have to win every game. They can't lose. They can't afford to lose. Like that's not like, yes, the Mets need to keep winning, but the Mets don't need to win the next 22 in a row. If the Mets go 22-0, Ibby, they will make the playoffs.
Well, yeah, of course. But definitely a help in that playoff hunt right now. The Giants just walked off the D-backs, which is awesome to see. Finally, somebody loses ahead of the Mets. So obviously, on an off day, the Mets get a little bit of help. Hopefully, the Braves can follow suit as well as the Padres to make this race to the finish line that much more interesting. But thank you for that, Junior. I appreciate you breaking that in the chat.
I guess that lead, I don't think this is up to the second what I have in the standings in front of me because I don't know how often it refreshes on the app. But right now, or what I'm seeing is that the Diamondbacks were 2.5 games up on the Braves, which would mean they were 3 games up over the Mets. So now
Correct.
that would have gone down to 2.5 for the Mets.
That definitely didn't update because I had mine up and I remember what it said. So yeah, it didn't update just yet.
Yeah, I mean, it's just happened. So I'm sure, like, if I try to refresh it, maybe it will. Let's jump into the comments really quick. Guy I forgot to mention, but Very astute observation here from Stephanie saying JD Martinez too was a big positive influence on the team who wasn't here in 2022. Winner, yep. Carson saying this team doesn't have Drew Smith and Taijuan Walker active, such a better feel. Look, I think Taijuan Walker is a good vibes guy, but I don't think that Taijuan Walker is a great pitcher. I think we know that. And we all know how Carson feels about both of them as players, and I don't think he's necessarily wrong. And then Richard saying no Stroman either. And look, I mean, those are things that are important, guys who making big contributions, and guys who are good vibes guys. Ibby, I know we're at the 45-minute mark, but I think we should talk about this guy really quickly because I don't know. He deserves his flowers, but I don't know how much there's actually to say about this person, and that is David Peterson.
Okay.
David Peterson has been terrific. You know that I have not liked David Peterson over the course of his career. I've said a lot of disparaging things about him as a ball player, as a pitcher.
I've said nicer things.
You've said some nicer things. Neither one of us particularly high on him, though, in fairness.
Right.
And look, he has not had a great start to his career. He's been a very middling pitcher at best. This year, he's been an absolute godsend to the Mets. And the refrain that you and I always say on the show is that I'd rather be happy than right. And him being good makes me happy because he's helping the Mets. So I hope that he has found a thing that makes him this pitcher going forward. I'm not trying to rain on anybody's parade, and I'm not trying to pee in anybody's, cornflakes. I'm happy. I'm not ready to say that this is who he is yet, because to me, I just need to see him finish strong. But look, this point in time, he has done enough to put himself firmly in the conversation for the Mets next season, especially as they look to rebuild their rotation and go into a couple of different places, and they will have spots to fill. So he's had a great run. He deserves his flowers, and he is firmly in the conversation, to be in this starting rotation. Of course, next year he deserves that. But I need to see a little bit more before I can say that I'm entirely wrong, because I've seen a lot of down prior to this run.
I will say, and I'm glad you brought up David Peterson, because I know Carson has been someone that has, in our chat, and whether it's a joke or not, or trolling or just having fun with it, like he's saying here, Andrew Heaney's offspring can't fool me. And we know Heaney had that one crazy year, and he's kind of been an up and down pitcher ever since. But I got him right here in front of me. The last month for Peterson, he's had 7 games started, 4 wins to no losses, 44 innings pitched. He's only given up 9 runs, 38 strikeouts in those 44 innings, which is about 7.6 strikeouts per 9. He's pitching to a 1.81 ERA. Now, I know his expected stats are a lot higher than that. It's a pure anomaly at this point that he's getting the results that he is. And a lot of times when you see those types of numbers, yes, they do come back down to earth. And I'm not fighting against that. I know that those numbers will eventually fall back to the mean. But right now, where I am, I'm not even focused on the idea of him being a pitcher for this rotation next year. I'm not worried about penciling him in. There's still a lot that's going to go on between now and the start of next season. So we will see. I'm not doing anything with him. What I am doing is saying I love everything that he's been doing on field for this team right now as they're in the thick of a hunt. Will this come crashing down during this run? Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But right now, I cannot disparage the guy. There's no reason to. He has been awesome. He has been providing innings. He has been giving this team an opportunity every single time that he goes on and toes that rubber. He's been giving this team a chance to win ball games. And that's all you can ask for when it comes to a pitcher. So I know people are weary to give him credit because we've been burned many times before. But also, if you want to play the every other year, I believe we're on a year where David Peterson is supposed to be good. So I think when it comes to that back and forth, if you want to think about next year, we'll think about it next year, man. We'll think about the offseason. We got plenty to talk about when it comes to the offseason, how they're going to build this rotation up. But right now, this guy deserves respect because there's no reason not to give it to him. He's been awesome.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that sentiment. And, I only bring up next year just so that people, especially people who might be new, we get new listeners and new live
Of
viewers
course.
and stuff all the time.
course.
I don't want people to think like that I'm throwing something away when I'm just like, oh,
No, I get you.
he's been really good, but like, so I put that in there because the Mets are going to have openings. The Mets are going to have decisions to make. But your point is very well taken. I mean, like Richard, this is a great comment, kind of counter to Carson's and how I felt about Peterson is that he always thought he had it in him. It's finally coming out. And, Ibby, that is one of the things that I think is a little taken for granted. I forgot who tweeted this, but it is worth mentioning. If you're somebody who is in the chat who tweeted this, it might be, I don't remember, but so I apologize for not remembering or having it handy. I was looking for it, but I can't find it. It's important to remember that historically, lefties take a little bit longer to develop, right? That's always like the adage. Lefty starting pitchers, a little bit longer to develop. But the other thing is, David Peterson came up in 2020, coming straight up from Double-A, lost some of his development time to pitch out of necessity on that team. And maybe that was a setback. Maybe that set him back, for 3 years with some of the weird injuries he's had and some of the ineffectiveness and the bouncing back and forth. So, maybe this is David Peterson now, right? Maybe 4 years removed from that first call-up, healthy, confident, getting success, getting failure, bouncing back and forth. Maybe this is the genesis, right? Maybe we've actually watched a pitcher fully develop before our very eyes. You know what I mean? Like maybe it's possible. It's a good. I'm not going to sit here and say it is. I'm just saying that it was a good observation. One that I had forgotten about, if I'm quite honest, that Peterson came up during that tumultuous time in 2020. But it is. I'd say at least worth reminding people.
I think it's also fair to say that he's probably not as good as he has been, and maybe he's not as bad as we've seen him be when he's bad. Maybe he's just a middling type of pitcher that's a fifth type of starter. Maybe he is. But right now, the guy's pitching like a co-ace. And as you can see on the ticker on the bottom, I put down Peterson, Manaea co-aces because right now, the way that those two lefties are pitching, they are the ones that are carrying this team during a time where the offense hasn't been doing it.
Absolutely. This is a good one from Douglas, just saying it's more important to enjoy Peterson pitching well than it is to use analytics to show why he should be failing. And
True.
I do think for someone who, is and I'm not taking a shot at Carson when I say it, Carson's good at this because he does deep dive into these things. And that's part of the reason why he doesn't like Peterson, because he's like, well, you look at some of the peripherals and it doesn't bode well for long-term success. The reason why I right now am leaning more in the Douglas camp than in the Carson camp, even though overall, as far as Peterson's concerned, I feel more like Carson does, is because there's 22 games left. So, like you said, I'm just kind of going to enjoy the ride. I don't want to know why it might fail. I don't care. It's kind of it's that line in The Waterboy when he's like, last game of the year, Brett can't hold anything back now. It's kind of like it's like we're in the home stretch. You can't like it kind of doesn't fucking matter, honestly.
Yeah.
Just keep doing this. I don't care if he's doing it with peripherals, if he's doing it with regular statistics. I don't care if he's doing it with witchcraft, black magic, smoke and mirrors. Doesn't matter. He's doing it. That's all I care about. So that said, I think it is a good place to leave this. We have a lot more to talk about. We'll head into the break. For those of you who are watching live, it is just a quick 30-second ad spot that we need for the audio version of the show to make sure we get some bills paid and put some stuff in there. So if you're watching live, don't go anywhere because we will be back in just about 30 seconds. That said, if you are watching live and you haven't already, like the video if you like what you're seeing and what you're hearing, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And of course, turn those notifications on, because if you have the notifications on and you're subscribed, you will never miss an opportunity to know when a new show drops, which is usually Wednesdays at 5:30 Eastern. But on a week like this, where we adjust things a little bit for our schedule, and also because of the Mets schedule, you'll never miss the opportunity to know when we're going live. And, you've seen how active the chat is here, and how much we try to, cater to the chat and how it really gears the conversation and helps further the conversation. Yeah, it's a huge part of the show. So that said, don't go anywhere. 30 seconds. John Saponaro, Matt Ibanez, Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, courtesy of the Brella Sports Network. We'll be right back. Yo, just like that, we are back with Til Mets Do Us Part, live on YouTube, live on Twitter, all courtesy of the Brella Sports Network. And we appreciate everybody who tunes in live each and every single week, or for those of you who tune in live sometimes. I understand that you can't always be with us. Sometimes when we move the show, make it later. Sometimes we move it to a different day. It accommodates certain people. It's not great for other people. We understand that. And so if you can't be here live, you can always watch it when we're done with the broadcast. It lives on our YouTube channel, which is appropriately called Til Mets Do Us Part. It'll be there forever and ever and ever and ever until humanity is extinct, because you can't take anything off of the internet. You can try, but you will not be able to. Someone will find it somewhere, I promise. So you can do that. You can also listen to us about an hour, sometimes 2 hours, shortly after we are done. This drops as an audio podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, all of those places and more. So for those of you who travel, listen to us, back and forth on your way to work, when you go to the gym, if you go for a run, all of that stuff, you certainly can take us with you. The only difference is you won't be able to see our faces. You'll just have to listen to our lovely voices. Ibby, I know I said that we had the ad break in there. That's for the audio show. But for the live show, we've got to talk about a couple of our sponsors real quick. So let's talk about Independent Safes.
Independent Safes, as always, John, are protecting homes and businesses with secure residential and commercial safes. It gives you fireproof peace of mind in every corner. Visit independentsafes.com today for security that stands strong. And of course, you're spending over $99 on anything over at Independent Safes. Tell them that Til Mets sent you. They'll take care of you when it comes with the free shipping. And of course, letting them know that we took care of you in that sense is always a nice thing as well. So it lets them know that their words that are coming from us are paying their end as well. So if you have any needs when it comes to that, visit independentsafes.com. And I might buy myself an Independent Safe, as always, just so I can put Carson in it when it comes to bad-mouthing our true king of David Peterson, who gets the crown for everything that he's been doing for this team. Carson, I might have to put you in one of those Independent Safes to show some true respect, or until you're willing to show some respect for what David Peterson has done for this season. Independentsafes.com. Check them out. Tell them Til Mets sent you.
Ibby, I know you're a teacher, so I'm going to do this the respectful way.
Yes, John, in the back corner, who's always talking. What do you want?
You got me pegged on that one. One day I'll tell you the story about the best shot I ever took at a teacher in college. It was hilarious, and it was before I ever did comedy, but it was when I knew I could. But today is not the time for that. We have a lot more to talk about. My question is, why do you have a crown in your basement? What is that for? Why was it within arm's length? Like, I just got this bottle of water, or like my headphones case, or my glasses, like stuff that needs to be within arm's reach.
I have a desk, and I can't remember what show it was on, but we had a guest, and you had the same reaction where I literally went like this at one point, like that. And you were like, why do you have a crown? Like, why the hell do you have a crown? I bought this at one point for my daughter's princess theme birthday. And I thought, you know what? I might be able to use this as a prop one time or another for the show. I thought at the time, when we first started, and I was like, I'm going to keep it around. So I have a desk here, a little ledge in front of me. I have some Mets bobbleheads over here. I got some love, of course, for our main man, Aunt Rivera, Subway to Shea with the fantastic sticker.
Nice.
I got a lot of Mets stuff in front of me, so it's all show related things I like to keep over at my desk. So that's why it's an arm's length. So yes, our king, David Peterson.
It's a good one from Armand here. Ibby got that crown from Burger King.
Nah, this isn't paper. This is legit plastic.
Yeah. No, it's lit.
Not paper.
That's pretty. It's got like a soft inside, so you could wear it comfortably. It absorbs some sweat. This comment from Armand reminds me of the old Dane Cook bit when he talks about his first job.
He thought he was the Burger King.
Yeah, his brother thought he was the Burger King. You know what I'm saying? Classic bit. Dane Cook fell off so hard.
Oh, it's so
damn
sad.
It's so funny. Here's the thing. Before we get back into the conversation, got to shout out our other sponsors at Manscaped. And this is what I said at the top of the show about Charlie being a good sport, keeping it real, talking. Says, I got Manscaped today so they could shove a catheter in my groin. Answering Douglas Barnes, they wouldn't honor the TMDUP discount. I am so sorry that they would not honor that TMDUP discount. I think it's because they didn't get their stuff from Manscaped, but we've got good news for everybody else. Again, I appreciate Douglas being so real and also Charlie being so real and making light of a pretty serious situation, but that's why he's the best. We've got everybody else covered though. Over at Manscaped, TMDUP, which stands for Til Mets Do Us Part, is the code. If you use that code, you will get 20% off and free shipping. It's not 20% off or free shipping. It's 20% off plus free shipping site-wide. And you may think that you are not a Manscaped kind of person. Well, I just challenge you to check out their website, manscaped.com, and see all of the things that they have to offer, because it is more than just getting your downstairs area cleaned up. They have a ton of great stuff. You can shave your head, you can shave your nose hairs, your ear hair. They have beard trimmers, they have other body hair trimmers. They've got great aftershave stuff. They've got balms. They've got underwear that is super light and breathable. You can wear to the gym or when you go on a run or any of that stuff. So check it out. And again, especially if you're not sure, why not check it out with 20% off and free shipping, courtesy of us here at Til Mets Do Us Part. The code is TMDUP. So Ibby, a lot of stuff to talk about here with Lindor. And look, we don't know what's going to happen. Last week on the show, I said to you that I didn't think it was likely that Lindor would win the MVP because I think what Shohei is doing is just going to be too big. It's going to be the thing that all the writers kind of really go nuts over. But in the last week, and in fairness, it's gone on for longer than the past week, but in the past week specifically, a lot of stuff has started to pop up, like, the value added to certain things. And it's starting to sway me a little bit in the thinking. And here's one that was on MLB Network. The average with runners in scoring position: Ohtani, 217, Lindor, 265. The average in high leverage situations: Ohtani, 247, Lindor, 291. The OPS in high leverage situations: Ohtani, 799, Lindor, 844. So I know you have to start to dig into some things to make this case for Lindor. But I think a lot of this stuff begins to make a case for Lindor. Like, you have to dig harder, and you do have to weigh the fact that Lindor plays defense. But, another thing that was on that MLB Network graphic was innings on defense: Ohtani 0, Lindor 1,224 and 2/3. Lindor has also played 139 out of a possible 139 games, which is all of them, at the most important position on the field, and he plays it at a Gold Glove level. So I think what Ron Darling said is true. I asked Tom, my co-host on the goddamn Jets, his opinion, because he's a Yankees fan, but he's a great baseball fan, so he's unbiased. So I asked him on the show yesterday what he thought, and he agreed with what Ron Darling said, which is, if the Mets make the playoffs, I think you have to at least entertain. Like he said, if the Mets make the playoffs, if it was up to him, he would give Lindor the MVP with all of this. And if they don't, then it's a harder sell, and it probably goes to Ohtani. But
The shine's off then, yeah.
Yeah, look, maybe I also add this, and I'm not saying that this is why you do this, but Ohtani's won MVPs. Ohtani won MVPs for being a great hitter and a great pitcher. Ohtani's going to go back to pitching again next year, more than likely, and he's probably going to fucking win the MVP. So I don't know that he should be rewarded in a year where Lindor has put a franchise on his back and Ohtani is only doing half of what Ohtani does. He is doing it to a very high level. I don't know. I may have been swayed. Over the past week, I may have been swayed, and I don't want to get my hopes up that the Mets are going to get their first MVP because I still think Ohtani will win it, but I think you can make a real case for Lindor here, and people have tried.
I think that in order for the case, again, to really be made and have a shot, yes, the Mets have to make the playoffs. So I agree with Tom when he says that. I agree with what you were just saying. If the Mets make the playoffs, that means that Francisco Lindor continue to stay hot throughout September because he's going to have to for this team in order to make it because he's been a big part as to why they are where they are. I was having a conversation with TJ yesterday in the chat. I was having a conversation with him back and forth. We were talking about the odds and things like that, how they had changed slightly. I think it's still a ridiculous favorite for Ohtani to win, but
it
they
did
did
swing more into Lindor's favor than it had been. But yes, it's still overwhelming for Ohtani.
But we were just chatting about that, and we were saying, like, is there really a shot? And we were talking about how he has to stay hot in September, how he needs, how this team needs to make the playoffs. And I threw out some numbers, and I was just like, look, where he is right now, you look at it, and obviously he's going to break 100 runs. He's at 98. He's got 30 homers, 84 RBIs, 26 steals with a slash of 274, 343, and 844. I'm sorry, and 844. So, and 844 OPS, I should say. So I look at all those numbers.
He's likely going to get to 30, 30, 30, by the way, which would be 30 steals, 30 doubles, 30 home runs.
So you look at all of that. And then because again, I don't know if they're going to use defense so much as a metric, but it has to get closer. And I said last week, if his numbers were closer to that of Ozuna, I think he has a legit shot, especially if the Mets made the playoffs and he had Ozuna type numbers, then I think he would win. And I would be very confident in saying that. But in order to get there now, he has to stay hot in September. And I would say, looking at the numbers, do you think that there is a legit case if I said to you the Mets made the playoffs, he obviously breaks 100 runs, he has, let's see, he's at 157 hits, let's say he has 170 hits, he has, let's say, 38 home runs, he breaks 100 RBIs, he breaks 30 steals, and he maintains that 270 average with a near 850 OPS. Like, if you say all of that, I think we got a legit case here. It's still going to be, it's not going to be the offensive numbers that Ohtani, actually puts up in a 50-50 campaign, which is where it's trending for him. But if you take all of that and he carries the Mets and they make the playoffs, or God forbid something happens, like we were saying before, if something crazy happens with the Phillies, with the games that like God for anything along those lines, then the case is that much stronger. But the offensive numbers, they still have to keep trending up, which is crazy to say because he's been so hot. But if he ends, and I think, I don't have them in front of me, but Lindor's best season, I believe, was 38 home runs.
It was the juice ball. Mistaken. It was 2019 with the then Cleveland Indians, now Cleveland Guardians, 38 home runs in the juiced ball year.
So looking at actually, no, it was 2018, not 19. So 2018. Oh, really? Yeah, 2018.
I thought it was 2019.
These are numbers that I think can be attainable for him. So in 2018, his best year in Cleveland, we're not average wise, but his best year overall in Cleveland, he had 129 runs, possible, 183 hits, possible, 42 doubles. Okay, 38 homers, 92 RBIs, 25 steals, 277 average, 352 OBP, OPS of 871. That's he's in line to have those numbers again. And I know so many people used to bitch and moan that he didn't have those numbers. Well, you're getting them right now. And there is an argument that can be made if he reaches those numbers and it carries this team, you have more of a case, but you got to get to that point.
Well, let me ask you a question. I know batting averages and everything. What was his batting average that year? Because you said it wasn't as good.
It wasn't as good as 2019 was better in the juice ball. So 2018, his batting average that year was 277. 2019, which was a similar year, he had 32 homers that year, but he batted 284 that year.
Okay. The reason why I bring that up is because some of the numbers might be slightly worse than what you just rattled off, but some of them have a potential to be better, right? I don't know if he can get to 42 doubles, but if he goes 30 home, like if he goes, let's say, I don't know if he can get to 38 home runs, but if he goes and gets 30, let's just say he gets 35 across the board, which the likelihood of landing on all of those numbers.
He could reach 42 because right now he's at 38 doubles.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
He's at 38 doubles, so he could definitely break that 42.
So if he hits 35 home runs, let's just say 40 double, like it's going to be more than 40 more than likely, but 35 home runs, 40 doubles, has over 30 steals, hits around 280, and the RBIs potentially could be higher because what did he have that year? 94, you said? And he's 92. Already at 92 and he's at 86 right now. Yeah. So, you're looking at a season that could be in the upper echelon of 30 home runs, over 40 doubles, over 30 steals, over 100 RBI with a batting average between let's just say 270 and 280 for argument's sake. I mean, you're right. I don't think anything is sewn up. I'm not going to sit here today and tell you that Lindor is the MVP. I think the Mets have to make the playoffs, and I think you're right. He has to continue on this run that he has been on, which is a lot to ask him to do. But I do think that that's what it's going to take. But I think if he gets to some of the numbers that we're just kind of musing about right now, I think that's why 2 months ago, Ibby, it was who's the MVP? Ohtani or Ozuna? Ohtani or Ozuna? Ohtani or Ozuna, right? But now, and fuck Marcell Ozuna, but whatever. But now it's who's the MVP, Ohtani or Lindor? And the reason is, if it wasn't Shohei Ohtani and it was a regular DH, I think Lindor would already have this nearly locked up because Ozuna's fallen out of the conversation because he's got a lot of home runs, he's got a good batting average, very good batting average, and he's got a lot of runs driven in. But he is a absolute negative on defense. He doesn't play defense at all. Were he to do that, he'd be a negative. He doesn't have the steals. He doesn't there's no extra step to his game. He's having a very good offensive season in the three dominant for 100 years offensive categories of average RBIs and home runs. But outside of that, it's clear that he is not the player that Lindor is and is not having the impact that Lindor is having because Lindor has the defense and playing shortstop and playing every day and all this stuff. So I do think if Lindor gets to some of these numbers and the Mets make the playoffs, I'm not going to say it's going to happen, but I think it should. I do think it should. I don't think that Ohtani should be rewarded for being half of the player that we've expected him to be.
I know somebody brought it up when they were comping MVP years. I think it might have been, I don't know if it was the Morneau year where they were comping numbers between Morneau and David Ortiz at the time, who had an insane season, but didn't get recognition for it because he was just a DH. So it's going to be interesting to watch unfold. I'm with TJ as well on this one, where he's just saying how, he has to have that defining MVP moment too, taking a moment that would define a playoff run as well. And I said, my cousin is a Cleveland fan and, loves Lindor. And I remember saying to him, once he became a Met, I said, I would do anything to have, obviously at the time I was like, to have Lindor on my team, but I would do anything to have that moment that happened in Cleveland where he hit that home run against the Yankees and the place nearly exploded where he ripped one down the line and like went off the foul pole, and it felt like the place was going to come unglued. Like, I would kill to have a moment like that. And if a moment like that happens, if this team can have, if I can just, pat myself on the back for being at the game where this Mets team in 2015, when they had that game on Sunday night, where against the Nats, where they went, 3 homers and 4 at bats, it was Duda, it was Granderson, and just the place came unglued. If Lindor
was the third one Cabrera?
I can't remember who the third one was. I think Duda was the third one, so it had to be the top half of the lineup. And I don't know if it was Murphy. Maybe it was Murphy. It might have been Murphy, Granderson, Cespedes gets a hit, and then Duda, whatever it was. I remember Bryce Harper watching the ball from Duda go off the foul pole, and the place nearly came unglued. It was the first time that city felt truly alive. And if Lindor can have a moment like that, and he stays hot, like, things like that stick out. But the crazy thing is, a lot of times I think of what Ohtani's doing, and I think to Mike Trout, and I think to how Mike Trout should probably have more MVPs than he does, which is crazy to say. But when you look at the MVP years where he came in, when he came in second, the ones that won MVP, it took insane years from certain people. Like Josh Donaldson always comes to mind, came out of nowhere, like he has this crazy year, wins the MVP. But you're watching it happen right now almost, where Lindor's having this crazy year, and it's still, when you look at their stats next to each other, you can easily say, well, no, it's definitely Ohtani. But it's like the all-encompassing player too. So it's definitely interesting. And if this continues and he stays hot, it's going to make for a very interesting case. I still feel, as many have said in the comments, that the MLB wants their golden boy to get this, especially if it's something that they could, in their eyes, heavy quotations, their eyes, market something, which they suck at, but where they can say 50-50. It's one thing, in my opinion, where Ronald Acuna goes, whatever it was, 47-7.
47, yeah.
Like that's one thing, because he's an outfielder. Like that's one thing. He's playing
right. He's a great outfielder, cannon arm,
like
47 home runs, 70 RB, 70 steals. You're talking like prime Ricky Henderson. Like, no one steals 70 bases anymore.
Right.
And you're doing it with almost
like, I don't care about that. Like, regardless of the rule change, but like, that's a little bit different. And I feel like it's almost like we're making a bigger deal out of 50-50, where it's like, well, this guy, Acuna a couple of years ago almost went 50-70. Like, that's pretty impressive too. Like, so it's not like it hasn't been seen. And I'm not trying to poo-poo it. Right, as an outfielder, like, I'm not trying to poo-poo anything that Ohtani's doing. He's incredible. Like, I know he is a unicorn player. Nothing against him. This is me. This is you. This is us as Mets fans pumping up our guy who we feel, like I said last week, he is our MVP. And that's all I care about in the end. Do I want recognition for my team? Of course I do. Do I want respect for the guy that's been getting shit on by a bunch of people for the longest time when he shouldn't have been, because he's been incredible his entire time here in New York? I don't care what anybody says. Like, I want that recognition. But at the same time, it's like, if he doesn't get it, I don't care. If it carries my team to where I want them to go, I'm completely at peace with that.
I think the recognition thing is twofold. I'm happy that you said that. I think it's the recognition that Lindor deserves because of how he has been treated by the national media, how he's been treated by Major League Baseball. Yes, how he's been treated by the national media, how the national sports media, how he's been treated by Major League Baseball as a whole, and how he's been treated by, quite frankly, some members of the Mets fan base, which is laughable. So I think he needs that. I also we talked last week heading into the White Sox series about like not liking the futility aspect that some fans kind of like because it was a part of something of their fandom. So I don't like any of that. I don't like we have the most losses, over 162 in the history. I don't want that. I was so happy that the Mets, got a no-hitter. And then it was like, but then the no-hitter had this, there was really a hit by Beltran, but it's like, it wasn't a hit. It wasn't called a hit. So whatever. But then they go and they get another no-hitter and it's a combined no-hitter, whatever. But at least now they have another one. All of a sudden they have 2 no-hitters after not having any. The Mets don't have an MVP. I want to put that behind us. I want them, selfishly as a Mets fan, I want the Mets to have an MVP. I'm tired of it. So I think the recognition goes two ways. I think Lindor deserves it. Of course, that's first and foremost. And I think the fan base kind of deserves it. We're a great fan base. And you know, this futility of like, oh, the same old Mets, the LOL Mets, like all this shit starts to change when it starts to change. When wins happen, when MVPs happen, when eventually a World Series happens, hopefully several. But like, you know what I mean? Like it starts to change the tenor. And I think we've done as good of a job in the Steve Cohen era of changing the feeling around this team without actually winning as you can. And the next step becomes you've got to win, and you've got to, you know, the MVP is not as important as winning a World Series to the fan base and everything, but like it matters. Like, I just think like you need to start doing those things where it's like, shit, these Mets are different. This is not your, you know, the Mets we grew up with. This is not the Mets in the worst team money could buy. And this is not lovable losers and all that. It's not that. These are different. And you establish that by establishing that. So to me, that's a big part of it. I want to jump back into the comments. There's a lot of them flying in. This one from Johnny Boy. For me, being honest, Lindor stepped up as the captain, and I truly believe he's the biggest reason why the Mets are still fighting. This one from TJ is just a funny one. We all know that's actually Jimmy King's crown from the major motion picture Ready to Rumble. Yes, and
I love Ready to Rumble.
Oliver Platt played Jimmy King, didn't he?
That is correct. Oliver Platt, yes.
And
we love
Oliver Platt, great fucking character actor, Oliver Platt. I keep saying Lindor is the biggest. Oh, I'm sorry, I pulled that one up.
It's the same one, but it's
the same sentiment, but yeah. Stephanie saying, I agree with Buck too, because of defense. If Lindor goes 0 for 4, he can still help the team win. Rosie saying Ohtani will win, but Lindor deserves a ton of credit. Given the way the season started, the Mets need to make the playoffs to bolster his case. Sure. Then we've got Carson, gambling scandals, Ohtani 2, Lindor 0. But then, you know, John, Ohtani never booed the fans, okay? You can't. Okay. You know, the New York fan base is undefeated, okay? You can't boo the fans, okay? Mr. Nobody, Lindor never didn't tell everyone the name of his dog, which is such a hard thing to say out loud. You know what? Good one from Charlie here. Forget about Ohtani. Remember a year Guillorme came out of the pen, played good defense, got 0 MVP votes. Justice for Guillorme. And then, of course, there are a couple things here. Darren, in 1988, Kirk Gibson, a Dodger, had 25 home runs, 75 RBIs, Strawberry 39, 101, and Gibson won the MVP. Yeah, that's probably the most notable case of a Met getting screwed out of the MVP. I would also make a case for David Wright over Jimmy Rollins. Was that 2007? 2007. And I think it's because the Mets collapsed. And the Phillies beat them for the division. Seven games left with 7 games back with 17 left to play. And I think if the Mets hold on and the Phillies don't pass them, David Wright is the MVP and Jimmy Rollins is not. But history goes how it goes. And then this one from Armand. I saw a graphic that showed historic seasons from players that did not win the MVP, and one was when McGwire hit 70 home runs. Could you imagine hitting 70 fucking home runs and not winning the MVP? I don't care if you're on steroids, if the ball is juiced, if I don't care. Could you, Jesus? Oh my God. You know, Ibby, look, we only have a couple minutes left to play with, you know, before we're here for too long. So I don't know where you want to go kind of with the rest of this conversation. Don't want to get in the weeds on too many things, but there are some things that we could address with the upcoming schedule and, you know, talking about some of the, you know, just the Pete Alonso stuff as it relates to Matt Chapman. That's more of a off-season conversation.
That's more off-season, yeah. But I mean,
it is worth noting, though, because it is a domino.
It is.
And I think it's a fair dollar amount that Pete Alonso, I know they play different positions, but I think that's kind of what you're looking at, money and years wise.
What do you get? You got 151 over
6.
But he's also they're tearing out the next 2 years. So what did he make this year with them? How much? Because that'll be all in total being paid by one team, probably $175 million, let's say.
Yeah.
If that's what it is, whatever it is, over 7 years.
I mean, listen, I know people don't want to hear this.
That's a Gold Glove defender, though. That's a Gold Glove defender.
I know, but he's not. I don't care what anybody says. Matt Chapman is not the hitter that Pete Alonso is. He's not been that productive. He's a 25 home run guy who hit 32 home runs once or whatever he hit, 30-something home runs. Pete Alonso in a down year is going to hit probably 40. So, in his worst year ever, he's going to hit 40. All I'm saying is we round the numbers up. Let's say it's 175. I would sign Pete Alonso to that deal right now. I don't know if Pete would take it, but I think if you're the Mets, I think that's a deal that makes a ton of sense.
He'll ask for it. He'll ask for it, and I still question if he will get it. But I do agree with you. This is a domino. But once again, I say that the first base position is just treated a different way.
Sure.
I understand where you're coming from when it comes to being able to say in terms of just player to player, but baseball in general is going to say third base versus first base. Not sure, but like that's what's going to end up happening, I think.
But it's also not ridiculous when you think about. Thank you, Armand. Always the fact checker saying Chapman is making $16.6 million this year, so a little less,
a little under 170, then, right?
Yep.
Whatever that, yeah.
But you know what, Ibby? You're right about first base, third base, and value of contracts and all this stuff. We've always talked about that. First basemen don't reset markets, but 175 over 6 or 7 or whatever, like that will check the boxes of more money in AAV than Freddie Freeman, Goldschmidt, and Olsen, more money in total contract than Freddie Freeman, Goldschmidt, and Matt Olsen. So it's not this unbelievable earth-shattering contract, but it would make him the highest paid first baseman in the sport, which I think might be enough to get, you know what I mean? Like he might want
we're talking about cases being made here for Francisco Lindor. Hey, Pete, you want to make a case to make more money next year? Go on a tear, my man. Do what you got to do. Like that's kind of where it is, I think.
To his credit, he has hit some big home runs. He's had the same ills that he has had all season, which is trying to be consistent and striking out a lot and not being great with runners in scoring position and chasing pitches down and away, especially. All of those ills are still there, but he has hit some big home runs over the last week, and you don't want to. And honestly, over the last really like 2 weeks, you don't want to fault him for that because he has gotten a bit better. But yeah, you got to go on a hot streak. Have to.
And I also know that people like to joke and say, he hits home runs in garbage time or whatever, where it doesn't matter. And I know the Mets bullpen has been doing better, but I'd be lying and I'd be remiss if I said like, when we get to the bullpen, that sometimes I'm still not a little like, a little uneasy in my chair at times. So it's like, I don't care when Pete hits the home run. I don't care if they're up 5, it makes them go up 7. If they're up 7, they go up 9. I don't care. I'm still always going to be uneasy. So I will take every single run that I could possibly get. You want to complain and say, it's a time when it doesn't matter. No, every run matters against any team, against any bullpen. It doesn't matter. Like hit the home runs. I don't give a damn. Just give the team more of an opportunity to win.
I'm actually going to harken back to the comment that Douglas made earlier about David Peterson and apply it to this situation. It's more fun to just root for Pete hitting home runs than it is to try to point out all the reasons why Pete is not good, right? Like it's like there are 22 games left. The bullpen has not been good all season, save for a couple of stretches. One, hopefully that they're in right now. There is no such thing as meaningless home runs right now. You're in a playoff race. I don't care if he hits a home run up 10 or a home run down 10 or what. You've got to win games and you've got to score runs, and the bullpen being what it is, the starting pitching question marks. Is Tyler McGill getting another start? Paul Blackburn coming back. We still got Quintana in the rotation. Pete, just hit fucking home runs. Just hit home runs, drive in runs. I don't care. No lead is safe. So just, I do not care. Just go for it. I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, so I was going to bring up that they did update the standings. Obviously, the D-backs are now the Braves are now 2 back as opposed to 2.5 to the Diamondbacks after that loss. And just looking at the schedule, I was going to bring up real quick. I just wanted to say that looking ahead at September, we got the Reds for 3. We got the Blue Jays for 3. So by the time we come back next week, which again might be a little bit of a later start potentially because they got a game at 3:00. We'll talk about that. We'll figure things out moving forward. But 3 against the Reds, 3 against the Jays. And then, of course, the fun starts when we go to Philly. Then you got the Nats. Then you got the Phils again. Then the Braves. And ending with the Brewers. It's an interesting month. But I've talked about pockets of the schedule that can make a difference. I think right now we are in the midst of an important pocket. No matter what Will said earlier is true when it comes to this could come down, and it could come down to this Brave series that starts on the 24th of September. If they can stay hot and in it, which is 100% true, it could come down to that, but you still got to get to that point. And I think these next 6 games against the Reds, against the Blue Jays, they matter a lot because I think these are winnable games. They matter a lot because the teams in front of you are not losing.
Mm-hmm.
You got a gift today with the D-backs losing on a walk-off to a bad team. The Rockies are rolling over. The Braves are going to keep beating them whenever they can, if they're facing them still. We said before how the Braves have a much weaker strength of schedule. I think it's 8th easiest in baseball the rest of the way. So I think the Mets have the 4th toughest because obviously the remaining games with the Phils at 7. So this is going to be, as TJ said it to me in a conversation, it's spicy September. It's going to get hot. Things are, this really matters. But like I said, there's always pockets within a schedule. And I think these next 6 games, and I know it sounds greedy of me because this team has won 7 in a row. Okay. But I look at these next 6 games. I know the Reds are coming off a sweeping, I believe, right? They swept the Astros. So it's not like they're coming in as bums, but
you got it.
It might be bullpen games. They are struggling a little bit with the starting pitching. That doesn't matter to me. Like I look at all of it and I go, these are winnable games. You got to go out there and do. And I know things are always tougher on the road, but I look at it and I go, Reds, Blue Jays, you can do some serious work here. You can go 4-2. You can go 5-1 maybe.
I was just going to ask you if you would sign right now for 4-2.
I take 4-2 because I think it still keeps you in the hunt, and you hope across those 6 games that someone in front of you does lose a game here and there, so you can still play this game of staying within reach. But I think 4-2 is acceptable. I think it's proper. Winning both series goes a long way.
That's what I was going to say. I think 4-2. You don't care how you get there. Obviously, you'd like to get the wins when people get the losses. Blah blah blah.
No,
but
of course.
4-2 is essentially 2 series wins, right? Like that's what when I think of 4-2 in 6 games with 2 series, I think of you're just trying to win both those series. That's the goal. So, that's what I would go for. And this is what I was saying before, and you kind of just touch back on it now. Armand saying Manaea pitches tomorrow and it says TBD for the Reds. Right now, I think the Reds might be going with 3 bullpen games, or at least that's the way that their situation lines up. They might. You never know. If they move up a guy, you don't know if they reach into the minors and get a starter and whatever happens. But one thing I wanted to ask you, we don't have to spend a ton of time on it just because I don't think it's super critical, and I'll admit, I had forgotten, which is why I didn't bring this up, the level of surprise that you had when you found out that the Mets were calling up Pablo Reyes. I forgot he was in the minors. I forgot they acquired him in June.
I did remember that Carson in our group chat as a joke threw out there 2 weeks or so before we were even talking about the potential call up. He threw out Pablo Reyes as a name, but I thought it's a good joke. It's like whatever he's doing, whatever in the minors or whatever, and it ends up happening. Because there have been some eccentric things done with call ups to this point. And, things that have happened on the more interesting side, I wasn't too shocked. I think because I had said that I wasn't sure that much about Luis Angel Acuna. I know we spoke on that when it came to the athleticism and the steals, and they opted for the vet that provides those things as opposed to the rookie. And I was saying how I thought that they would go with the veteran, even though at the time it wasn't DJ Stewart, it was somebody else. But they would opt for the veteran because they want to keep giving that kid more playing time as opposed to being a part-time player where he really hasn't been, setting the world on fire in a place where offense is supposed to breed an extreme amount of success that AAA does. So I wasn't too shocked, just seeing them, you're like, ooh, okay, whatever. That's kind of where I was, but because, it wasn't as though I thought that the person that was getting called up was going to be providing all that much for this team.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because the reason why last week, and this is why I admitted I forgot that Pablo Reyes existed, I tried to make a case for Luis Angel Acuna last week on the show based on it being him or DJ Stewart.
Right.
But the case that I made for Acuna took into account the fact that he wasn't very good over the course of his AAA career this year. And he provided stuff that the Mets could use, though. The positives were there. Well, Pablo Reyes is the veteran version of Luis Angel Acuna. You know, he's a guy who can play some infield. He's a guy who's fast. He's a guy who gives you some versatility. Like, everything that I said for Acuna, Reyes fit. And so what I tweeted out, and this is kind of the sentiment that Douglas is pulling up here when he says, more importantly, DJ Stewart has been sent back down now that JD Martinez is back. But that's what I tweeted out when it happened. I was like, I'm happier that the call-up wasn't DJ Stewart than I am angry that the call-up wasn't Acuna. Because It was just like, it didn't have to be Acuna. It just couldn't be Stewart. Yeah. And obviously Stewart winds up getting called up anyway, but as a result of, you know, the paternity leave and everything for JD Martinez. So, you know, I think ultimately they made the right choice. And it is what it is. So we're over an hour and 30 minutes. We've got things to do and lives to get to and people waiting for dinner. So, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
I got nothing really, John. Enjoy this run. It's crazy that we've gotten to this point where there's 22 games left and this team is right there. Enjoy every minute. It feels like, there's a reason why I made the caption or the title what I did, Playoff Vibes in Queens. You watch this team. You know, when I went to the game a couple of weeks ago on a Wednesday against Oakland, the place was hopping. There was a lot of people there, more than I thought that there would be. I thought that they gave my buddy those tickets just because they're like, it's Oakland, no one's going to be here, so just take these free tickets. But the place was packed. So just seeing these games and these fans are rabid. And I know someone brought up in the comments before, they're singing along to Lindor's music. They're chanting MVP. I love every minute of it. You as Mets fans, take in every single moment that you can. You get an opportunity to sit on the couch, watch this team do it. You get an opportunity to go to the stadium and watch this team do it. Have some fun. 22 games left. Let's go Mets. And of course, we're going to keep on rooting for our guy. We hope that he wins it, and I hope he does. Francisco Lindor, you are the man. Hopefully, you can walk away with an MVP. But that's all I got to say. Let's go Mets.
Word. Maureen saying, great shoe as usual. Thank you. You can't see our shoes, but they are great. I assure you. And then saying show. Thank you, Maureen, for shouting out that it's a great show. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Maureen.
Yeah, Ibby, I'll just for my final thought, I'll just second everything you said. This is why you watch sports. They are in a spot where they can do a lot of fun things down the stretch. It's been fun. It can continue to be fun. Let's just enjoy it because sports are up, sports are down. Right now, this is up, and you should be enjoying it. I know that's the refrain that we always quote from Lori Rubinson, friend of the show, of course, great host on WFAN, but it's true. Sports are up and down. Right now, it's up. This should be the positive. So LFGM, thank you to everybody in the chat. The chat was lively today. Hit the like button if you haven't. Subscribe if you haven't. You subscribe, you're automatically entered to win an Edwin Diaz autographed baseball. And Ibby is not giving it up until we hit 1,000. Could take 1 week, could take 1 year. Up to you.
Don't care.
I guess.
Up to you.
If you've already subscribed, thank you so much. Stephanie says, great show. Thank you.
Steph.
Douglas saying, great show and great chat. Let's go
Thank
Mets.
you,
Thank you. Darren saying, great job, John
Love you,
and
Darren.
Ibby, everyone
Thanks,
in the chat, and Mr. Nobody saying the same thing. Great job once again. Have a good one, folks. LFGM. I'm John. That's Ibby. Shout out to John Minconi golfing with Jeff McNeil once again. Hot streak incoming. Maybe. We'll see.
Let's go, baby.
This is Til Mets Do Us Part. We're live on YouTube, live on Twitter. We will see you all next week. Peace.